for SK to pick it up here. Trying to walk through the smoke, but it's just not going to happen. SK Gaming, second major championship in a row. They are your winners.
Despite Fnatic's best efforts, it goes the distance. It goes all 3 maps. And we have our champions, the best team in the world, Ninjas in Pajamas.
Red touching the box. Are they going to peek? Holding it now, and there is it. It's just out of Flamey. It's not going to happen. Astralis have won the face at London main. There's no time. He just has to watch that clock tick down. This is it. Na'Vi have taken the major.
Okay, so this one, this is going to be intriguing as well. I mean, I honestly thought Streak NIP versus 2015 NIP might have been a little bit closer. It wouldn't have been unanimous.
We did talk it through a lot, to be fair. There was a lot of sides to it.
Yeah, this one, there's definitely a lot of sides to this. So, 2014 Virtus Pro, which is Taz, Neo, Snacks, Bialy, Pasha, and they're taking on 2015/16 Na'Vi, which is the Zeus, Edward, Seized, Guardian, Flamey lineup.
I want to start this one because I want to say one thing. This is an example of another area that it's impossible to actually have a perfectly defined criteria for this list. Because realistically, Chad sort of hinted at it. One of the reasons why this team is on the list is because the first thing you think is Katowice 2014, they only lost 1 map. It was in fucking overtime, and some of the players went on to be in Fnatic, spoilers. So, like, if you're that dominant at one major, immediately you're going to be on a list like this. But I will say this aspect. The troubling thing for Virtus Pro is, funnily enough, the same storyline as to when those players were in 1.6. They were almost never actually a team that was consistently the best team. And their accomplishments tended to be spread over many, many years. Like you'd play 4 or 5 years. So if they're going for like a short period, they're in trouble. This is a team, remember, that we're not talking about just 2014. Realistically, this lineup broke up in 2017 and they were playing at the end of 2013. So like they were the longest tenured 5-man lineup at the time, blah, blah, blah. Like it's a team that's about longevity, peaks, consistent. Like they actually have it all. It's just the problem I have is they also did lose to a lot of teams on this list. You know, I think there's a big discussion we can have here. There's a lot of
for sure. And just to, you know, I mean, obviously the sort of high point for the 2014 Virtus Pro is obviously that Katowice win. You know, crazy stories around that. But that was the cluster where I think they probably had the most consistency.
Sure.
You know,
they were always top 4 or something at that time.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Just constantly podium finishes. And you know, you
always enjoy the chance to win majors, etc.
Yeah, and if you were a 1.6 fan, obviously you know that these guys, like you say, going right the way back, they would rock up and win like world fucking cyber games out of nowhere, like they did when they were under the moniker again. You know, after a spell with an unknown org called Vitriolic. And then they would go to the next few tournaments and they wouldn't win. But, you know,
and sometimes even be shit or something. Occasionally,
yeah, exactly.
You know, you never knew.
I mean, I feel that was almost like a hallmark of 1.6 in general. You know, there was a lot of competitive teams that could all beat each other on the day, especially at the later stages, because everybody knew everybody else. There was only realistically a handful of truly great teams that were capable of winning tournaments, and they played each other at all these tournaments. But I mean, for me, you know, when Virtus Pro were good, when they were like this 2014 version of themselves, when Snacks and Bialy peaked alongside the last of the summer wine from fucking Taz and Neo, they were unplayable. You know, they were fucking unplayable at this point in time. And like you talk about people fearing them, nobody wanted to.
One of the most terrifying teams of all time.
Yeah, we've drawn Virtus Pro, like, fuck, we're going to get run over, you know?
That was the other thing, by the way. It's not even like when Chad was saying, like, you know, nip intention because they know you're a weaker team, like, you know, tries to pull it. They played no respect CS against the best players in the world. The joke is they would go against Olafmeister and, like, Get Right, who were the best, and just be like, fuck them, treat them like they're absolute shit off the bottom of your shoes, body them.
That was the like Virtus Plow, right? Like that's the way that they approached the game. Yeah, and the thing with what they did, like, it wasn't necessarily on meta. Like a lot of the stuff, I remember stealing a lot of stuff they used to do on Cobble. Like I remember watching the way that Taz would like in-game lead it, or at least entry frag in certain situations. And it almost was like he was pace setting with some of the stuff he would do. And I just like stole that because I was like, I like to be aggro first in. And I knew that my teammates were like, I got guys who want to check every single fucking corner, right? I don't got time for that shit. That's probably why I was dead half the time. But I looked at that stuff and it was like so pacey. And that's what I liked that. I liked momentum-based Counter-Strike where you could shift it and it was good for faking. Like we've just done a couple fast hits here. Let's throw those smokes. Like they had that kind of stuff in their playbook as well. And I really liked watching that team. But the problem is history hasn't been kind. Like that's the biggest issue I have is like my memory of that team is like, oh, Mercedes destructed this team that probably should have already been dead, right? Like, and now look at Snacks and Bialy's playing PUBG or some shit.
Sure, I mean that's
like, I've got to get past that.
Yeah, that's after the fact.
They didn't also last way longer. Like if you last 4 years, eventually it's going to fall apart. Come on.
Keep in mind there's like a major final appearance en route to that period.
If you don't know, here's a stat for you. Every single year I think every single year. Let me think, is it every single year that we're talking about, they were at least in the semis of a major.
Yeah.
That's fucking unreal. 2014 to 2017. What? That's real. Yeah. That's bonkers. Because I always used to say they were like the gatekeepers of the major. You almost always had to beat them to win the major because they were always so close. Here's a story I'll give you, which is to me the ultimate Virtus Plow story. People forget this one. It's such a great setup. It's when you had ESL Cologne, and what happened was they were playing Fnatic in the quarterfinals. They were won a map, and I think it was Inferno was the second map, and they were leading, and Pronax did the infamous timeout. And after the timeout, he just did like a soul read, and he just mid-rounded the whole game. And Fnatic comes back and wins this, goes on, wins the major. Here's what people forget. Next tournament is the Dubai tournament Chad was talking about. Virtus Pro, because they know they should have won this match, and they just shit stomp Fnatic. It's a 2-1, but like the maps they win are just like they body literally the team that's just won the major and is in the era. They just body him and just get him the fuck out of there. And that's actually one thing people wouldn't understand. The mental of this team as well was very unique. It wasn't that they thought they were the best. They just never believed they should have lost a game in a good way. As in, like they never for example, that Atlanta major. Don't ever go and tell the Ortaz that like Astralis should have won that major. They'll kill you. Like in their world, like that was.
They shouldn't have. No, to be fair,
sure, but to them it was like a travesty. Like to them, it was oh, this is bullshit. Like, I've got fluked. So I always thought they had. This is why they lasted so many years. Even when to us they were slumping, like online famously, they would just have 3 months where they were dog shit. They were the ones who were just like, nope, you get us back to a LAN, get us in front of a good team, and we will deliver. And they pretty much always did for 4 years.
Yeah, it is insane that they win. Like you say, I mean, semi-final appearances in the majors, but they also win a sizable tournament almost every year that they're active as well.
I think I think this is probably for me. I think this is actually a fun matchup. Just when you think about these two teams and their respective eras, like stylistically, like remember how good Snacks and Bialy was, and Snacks was like even like. No one ever gave him the moniker of smoke criminal, but like remember Snacks was like one of the first players to really show how you could play inside smokes. He was one of the most sneaky and creative players in chaotic situations. Hide in a smoke, let them pass you. Just sit there, come out behind them, get a double kill that stalls everything. That VP team as well. I remember
contender for best lurker ever for sure.
Yeah. And I remember that VP team was like in one of the instances of like the first actual progression of like production value with a TO. We timed once for a desk segment how fast VP went from executing onto a bomb site and actually getting in and getting the bomb planted on train. And they were so fast, and nobody was doing at the time where like the execute would happen and 5 seconds later the bomb's being planted. Like they wouldn't even there'd be 4 people taking a fight. One person's getting the bomb planted while all that shit is going down. And that was crazy for the time. And you contrast that with Navi, and this is the era of Navi, remember, where they caught that reputation that they've held on to for so long of these rounds are going to go down to the last 10 seconds. We are going to stall round. We are going to slow play our T rounds. We are going to run out of time frequently.
Stylistic mismatch,
Yep. There's going to be an unexpected smoke we don't realize, or an unexpected play at 10 seconds that stalls everything out. And I think when you look at that, when you look at how fast paced and aggressive VP could be when they were playing their best, and then how slow and methodical and just like machine like that Navi was at the time, I think VP, there's a real good chance they just kind of smashed through this Navi squad.
Well, I mean, listen, okay, so on the other side of the equation, I'll push back a little bit on that because this for me, this Navi roster, it's one of the most disappointing.
It's like the TSM team, right? It should have been better, right? Should have won more.
Yeah, it's one of the most disappointing. I mean, look, we can talk about Zeus and Edward and what they were in CSGO, but I don't even think in 2015, 2016, I don't think they were like some like horrific, embarrassing.
No, they were all right. Edwards actually was pretty good. I remember.
And remember, I mean, again, you want to talk about cheating allegations? People were even he was popping up in all them compilations. So Edward did have a little bit of a renaissance, and obviously as well, you've got to have some experience foundationally for any team to be successful. And Zeus and Edward played in one of the greatest Counter-Strike teams of all time, arguably the greatest Counter-Strike team of all time. Then you had Seized. I know he's a fucking mega meme now. He's washed as fuck.
But back then,
back then, Seized, like I used to call him the cut price Crims because he had that ability to lock down sites individually. Then, obviously, Flamey was the young, explosive starlet who used to drop like 40 kills on Mirage, no problem, no sweat. And, of course, the real jewel in the crown here is like the last great run for Guardian. And so this lineup was in 2 major finals. Back-to-back, I think. And lost both of them in like tragic, mad caveat circumstances. It wasn't about bad play. There were all these contextual stuff around, obviously, famously at Columbus 2016, which is when sort of this lineup runs up to. Even, Guardian broke his elbow or something going into that tournament. Played a tournament with a broken elbow, for fuck's sake, all bandaged up, arm locked up, had to change his sensitivity, made it to a final. One of the most like outrageous, heroic things a CSGO player could do, realistically. Your fucking mouse arm is busted. And so I always, and the other one they were runners up at obviously was Cluj Poker. And that was one of the most competitive majors.
For sure.
So I just wish they had more trophies in the cabinet. But I look at this lineup and these 2 lineups going against each other. I don't know, man. I can be swayed either way, honestly.
First of all, they obviously did play because Virtus Pro was around forever, and it used to be a fucking banger matchup every time. It was one of the all-time. As Jason says, the pace is completely opposite, isn't it? It's like one of those. It's the immovable object versus the irresistible force, isn't it? So there's a couple of angles I'll give to the Na'Vi side. Spoiler: I'm probably going to give it to VP, but I'll build the case for the Na'Vi side because obviously the problem with the Na'Vi side is they didn't win much. But if you want to build the case for them, here's an immediate slight get out of jail free that they get. And it's the same get out of jail free that FaZe Clan gets with Nico. Your star player is speaking in a second language. Like Nico, at least it's English he speaks. Guardian speaks a bit of Russian, but as far as I know, I don't think he was ever truly fluent. Now, listen, he is the AWPer. You can sort of just put him somewhere and he shoots people. But at the same time, the idea that you can't totally communicate with your star player when you're playing a very tactical style of play that's going to come down to minute differences at the end of this round to plant a bomb and to win, that's fucking hard. So I'll say that they were skating uphill on that one already. Then I'll add this in. One thing I thought they actually did, which was very innovative, is they're the reason, as far as I can tell, that Valve took away fucking coaches doing it. Because essentially Starix was the leader of the team. He would have said, that's why Flamey was at his best ever when essentially Starix could sort of lead the team and sort of be like, do a Ricky, like he's on your screen there, like what obviously wasn't panicking. But
have you ever gotten have we ever gotten, because that was the rumor I always heard and I loved, was that Starks literally just micromanaged Flamey. Like wasn't even like coaching the team or calling for the team. He'd just be like, all right, Flamey, start moving up now. And then he'd look at their screen and be like, all right, Flamey, start throwing grenades now. And he would literally just micromanage one player. Yes. And I've never gotten confirmation of
the problem is you'll never get it on record, just like I've in private heard it from Starix, but that's also the same Starix that like would talk to me for 2 hours.
Coming out or something.
He would talk to me for 2 hours at an after party, and then the next day go, so anyway, what do you think about it? And he'd go, little English. I was like, but whatever, see you next time, I guess. So I will just say it, not everything he says was true, believe it or not, as Richard also alluded to, plenty of lies in there. And I will just say this, you did it, Starix, so I'm going to invoke it. You did imply you knew about there being that coaching bug back in 2015. Spoiler, you were the coach of this team at the time. Like, I'm just going to say that, I'm just going to put that on the table. That's
like rounds of music.
Yeah,
I'm pretty
it's
sure.
not a big deal.
I mean, it's why the Gambit winning that major and Zeus getting his major trophy with that team and not getting one with Na'Vi.
Oh, it was a big deal.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because look, so again, for historical context, I'll be honest, I'm a sucker for a good narrative. You know, I can be totally swayed. And so when Zeus did that, I was like, shit, maybe we were wrong. Maybe Edward was holding him back. Maybe Starix was overcalling him and not doing it the Zeus way. And of course, when Zeus came back, getting the bag because he was now major winner Zeus coming back to Na'Vi. He fucking was shit. And in fact, actually, they were worse than, where they were in this period we're talking about. So I'd always heard behind the scenes that like Starix, I don't know about micromanaging Flamey, but I know he had a lot of input into like mid-round stuff and, what Flamey needed to be doing. And I heard about the micromanagement story. I don't know how true it is. I don't think Zeus has the mental capacity to micromanage anything except his fucking Instagram. So
I will say this, even though like Starix basically killed his career, because if you remember, he went and he made Team Spirit before you knew who Team Spirit was, and they were nobodies, and he tried playing again. If people don't know, as coach, he had loads and loads of offers after he had to leave this team. And there even, as far as I know, were NA teams who said, we'll even let you play, even though obviously he hadn't played for like over a year at that time. So that's how much like respect people had for his actual like game. And I'll add this last detail in. One thing that would make this matchup amazing if you did play at the time Travel LAN, spoiler, they also did play in real life, is these are two teams that at certain points in time had like almost the whole map pool. Like these teams almost had like the 7 maps. Like these are unbelievable. Like they could just go anywhere because of the nature of the team. Like the Na'Vi team has its own set style. The VP team just believe they can win on every map. Like these were two teams it'd be a great matchup. It'd be a slugfest to the 13th round or whatever,
I think when we're talking about the stylistic clash as well that Jason was bringing up, right? Both teams, even though we know that VP had the fast stuff, I think both teams were known for like just like their how much they could constrict you on the defaults as well, right? Like that was one of the things that I think both these teams have that's a strength. The trophy cabinet, I for the VP we're talking about, and you consider what you were saying, Duncan, about all those getting as far as they did in all those majors back to back. Like that was also the remnants of the 1.6 core as well. And they would have been the ones, if we are going all the way up into 2017, who lasted the longest, which is actually like out of all the 3-man lineups from 1.6, like they lasted the longest, which is actually insane because they were already old boys coming into CSGO, right? So weighing up these two teams right here, like both teams have a wealth of experience. Like that, I remember we must have been doing segments around these guys talking about all the 1.6 history, right? With Edwards, So I think like approach to the game, philosophy, all those things, because that's where the brains were coming from for both teams was the older players, right? Very similar, and we're not talking in a big amount of time period here. So this one is really, really hard to call because I remember getting bodied by this Na'Vi multiple times. I think over like 2 best-of-3 series, we played them. Maybe we got 25 rounds. That's over 4 maps. Like I remember Flamey just destroying us like we're fucking pod bots. Like it wasn't even the Guardian show. It was Flamey, right? And a lot of people don't remember, like Flamey came from Dat team, right? Which was like nothing. And then Flamey was one of those prodigies or one of those, kids that we're talking about and Flamey was that, right? It appears that we've learned now that it seems to be a bit more of a mental that's holding him back than anything else. But in terms of his mechanics, like he was really good. I talked about Hobbit before, how on like Cobble, he was a turret, same kind of thing. I remember that from Flamey. To be fair, I don't remember a lot of like C's popping off and doing a lot or Edward popping off and doing a lot, but I don't think they needed it. Like, I just think that they had like a steady base as a team here. So like I'm just trying to recall how much, because this is starting to get into the black period of my career where everything is a little bit dark. So
they start closing in.
I've got a contrast I can give you, which is the one thing I'll say is this. If we're talking about the peaks, the difference is this. VP would just roll over you and smash you. Na'Vi, no matter what, would just grind you out and win 16-13. And obviously not talk about your squad. I think the other top squads, they would just grind you out. Like they would do every game with 16. They either lost 16-13 or they won 16-13. I've got one funny story for VP I can do to bit of levity to the table. Fallen, unironically, this is free, he's not trolling, says Pasha was one of the hardest players to ever play against because, famously Pasha had like the dog shit movement. So then what would happen is he would unintentionally, Chad, make you miss because when he would peek out, right, basically Fallen calls it, you do like the Pinocchio, he would be behind a train, right, and you just see the op barrel and it's coming out, so you think, oh, it's going to come, you just track it like, right, I'm going to like shoot in like half a second because it's Pasha, like you'd miss it, oh fuck, and then he just like hit a normal shot on you and say, what the fuck? I can beat Device, like, the Guardian. But if you play Pasha, somehow your brain can never process that he essentially moves. Like his unit moves like 100 units slower or something, like it doesn't make any sense. But that is just VP in a nutshell. They just couldn't do it, mate.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'll also add as well as points against Na'Vi for the collapse in Columbus.
For sure.
I mean, like, that is one of the most shocking lapses of leadership I've ever seen. And again, because I know there'll be a bunch of newbies looking at this, we were there. We were up in the bleachers because that's obviously the famous EG motherfucker that got turned into GG motherfucker.
Yes.
Right?
No, that was don't retcon shit, Richard. That was GG.
Don't tell the truth. You mean don't tell the truth? Yeah. But that was when I brought you that fucking cowboy hat I got out of fucking a Vegas gas station. But anyway, so we were up in the bleachers watching it, and they'd lost in overtime for some reason. And this, I don't think the stats really bear this out, but Zeus was utterly convinced Flamey had fucked up somehow. And he absolutely lit this kid up, right? And we could see it from where we were. They were shouting, very aggressive. And so when everyone went into the backstage area to like decompress, talk about the strategy, Flamey was just sat on the fucking main stage doing deathmatch. Keep in mind as well, they were already at a massive disadvantage because Guardian, the star player, has got a bandaged up arm and is playing on 4 times the sense. And then when they came back out and played on Overpass, they just got battered 16-2. Looked like they didn't want to be there. And, they went, they should have had one of those 2 major finals for me. I mean, Na'Vi were the favorites at Columbus. We were all saying it. Like, once they had that run and they 2-0'd Astralis, you're looking at the other side of the bracket,
for sure.
Luminosity and Liquid.
Yes. And they're playing till a knife edge or coming back from that point. I'll say this as well. Look, it'll trigger the fuck out Brazilian fans. So why did I even give that disclaimer? So here's the detail. I famously made a video where I said Luminosity's peaked because before this major, famously, they lost pretty much almost every time to Na'Vi and Fnatic. They beat Na'Vi one time at Katowice when Guardian apparently already had the hand injury. I did say in this video, one of the reasons why is that obviously Guardian and Olofmeister play on those 2 teams. Well, magically, if you have a LAN where Guardian and Olofmeister's hands are fucking wrecked, then you have a chance to win, believe it or not. That would help if Messi and Ronaldo broke their legs and then you win. You don't go, we were better than them. Like, look, it helps when they can't play the game, doesn't it? So I agree. I thought that one on paper, like they should have won that one.
Yeah, it's like, it's just crazy when you think about sort of that time period as well, that they'd emerged as being like a relevant team. This was sort of at the back end of it, this period we're talking about. Obviously, they'd gone through 2015 in that era, but there was a lot going on with other teams around them. Sure. It was a big, period of flux. Envious were on their way out. I think actually at that time, by the way, that might have been the Envious.
They came out last place or something, mate.
Yeah. So there was space for a team to emerge and be dominant, and Na'Vi were positioned to do that and just never got that over the line. But that isn't to say this Virtus Pro lineup was a dominant force either. I think we have a tendency to remember Virtus Plow so fondly because they gave us so many memorable series and so many almost like underdog stories and insane comebacks over a period of years that you lean towards them, when in actual fact, they probably had a disappointing trophy haul commensurate to the talent they had on the roster.
They've always, through all their different years, I think VP was always better than the number of trophies they got. And I think that's really probably the biggest negative that you could talk about this VP with if you wanted to make a case for Na'Vi. The biggest negative is the streaky nature, is the fact that, you never know if coming into this, you're going to get Virtus Plow and they're just going to win and they're going to steamroll through everyone, or if you're going to get the team that falls flat and shows their age and shows that, individually they can't quite match up to everyone. But the beautiful thing about this era was even if you had some of those things where I mean, obviously as their careers kind of progressed and this team went on, Taz and Neo, and then eventually kind of Pasha started falling there as well, kind of showed that they couldn't keep up with some of the younger individuals coming in. But Snacks and Bialy emerged this year. Before the major, that was the great story about Virtus Pro, because their transition into CSGO was so lackluster and so disappointing for the stories they brought over from 1.6 in the first year and a half, 2 years of CSGO. And then I remember hearing whispers before this major began, hey, And this wasn't like the typical player things like Duncan mentioned where like the NIP squad would be like, yeah, we were wrecking everybody in scrims. This was other pro players being like, holy shit, VP is running us over in practice. Holy shit, not a single team at this boot camp has beat Virtus Pro in a scrim or in practice. And like you kind of give it that same consideration where you're like, yeah, we always hear about the team hyped up in boot camp. We always hear about the team hyped up in practice games, but VP came in and backed it up in the major itself, like out of nowhere. So Snacks and Bialy really establishing themselves. Snacks is like the creative, like sneaky, lurking genius, and Bialy just being like an aimbot turret, just like plant him in a place and he's going to kill 2 to 3 people every single round. Those two young guns carried, and I think masked some of the other things that were tough for VP to handle throughout this year. But I mean, I think that is the biggest knock, is the inconsistency of the VP. And I think if you're Navi and if you want to vote for them to win this match, you've got to lean and rely on the fact that Virtus Pro is notoriously, up and down throughout these years.
Yeah, the thing is, the Navi team always came second. So even though they didn't win, which is a knock, consistency is fabulous.
Yeah. And look, I mean, for me, what probably would put me over the top towards Virtus Pro is obviously, as I said, I think Katowice, winning that and the run they had there, because they actually beat that LDLC lineup with Kaylee in it, Yeah. They beat them at that event. They beat that fucking sort of legendary LGB lineup with Crimson Olaf, Dennis, Twist. I mean, that's like one of the great forgotten lineups, honestly, because the 2 best players got airlifted into Fnatic. They beat NIP in the final.
That's the 5th Lauren 944.
Yeah, exactly. That is the disaster. Isn't that the one as well where didn't a clip come out and it was like Taz and Neo and they were like saying in Polish, like, go bully that shit gun.
Nice guys.
No, but I mean, during the game, so obviously you say whatever to win. And if I remember rightly, some clip came out where like 5th Lauren was having a nightmare. It might not even have been this tournament, but I think it was. 5th Lauren's having a nightmare, and they were basically saying, go find him, find where he's playing, go bully this cunt. And the clip had sort of emerged, and people were like, because it was Virtus Pro, they could get away with it. But, so, I mean, for me, that like the fact that they actually did win a major and did it like this.
Thing is, despite what Jason's saying, I didn't see them winning Katowice 2014.
I think I took a guess spot for you there, Duncan. I think I was on the desk then. We had to fill in. We did.
You and Kavian got your fucking shine, mate. Exactly.
Yeah. So thank you for that. I never said thank you. Yeah. But I just on the 2014 VP, I just went and had a quick little look. Right now, I know there's a bit of contention around HLTV's rankings, right, in terms of players. But as per theirs in 2014, Pasha was the 3rd highest rated player, the 3rd best player in the world. Snacks was the 4th, and Bialy was the 13th. So you had 3 players in the top 20 in 2014. Whereas
good firepower for sure.
Yeah, and neither of them, the old boys, that just had that like wily veteran smarts, Yeah.
It's one of these things where like I think I sleep on how good Pasha was.
For sure.
At
this
the time.
was a monster, mate.
Yeah. Beast.
Because like the Pasha we all know and now is the one going to go have an MMA fight, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So like it's not the one that. So I think that the issue I have with this Na'Vi one is what you guys are talking about with the final that they played and the mental being bad. And we always knew that Zeus was Zeus, when he is going to get mad at you, it's either going to fire you up inside and you are going to like play better and you're going to use that as energy to like turn it into something positive, or you're going to shut down, right? And like if you look at VP, the fact that they lasted so long, and I know that the last couple of years look pretty fucking miserable, but there's a lot of times where they still remain threatening, and you would have to assume that the mental played a part of that, right?
Yeah.
Until a Mercedes-Benz comes into things and actually like that rips them apart. Like that's the catalyst. Maybe there was things as issues before that, but like the catalyst for the team falling apart tended to be that car, right? So up until that point, for quite a few years, they had a strong mental, and they were always threatening. Considering the fact that they were majority of the team was getting older and their skill was deteriorating, they were doing a lot. They were doing more than they should have, right? Like, and a lot of that is why we would base conversations off of experience and this, that, and the other, right? So versus this Na'Vi team, yeah, I feel that Na'Vi would have struggled against this if they hit the wall and Zeus starts fucking raging, right? Like if I look at it from that angle, like this Na'Vi team, I remember. Sure, I looked at the stats. Yeah, I got fucking bodied by Flamey, but this is the Na'Vi team who were doing all the triple boosts on Overpass, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so like they were innovating in terms of the way that we would approach the game. They were definitely grinding out rounds, and it seems to be a bit of a Zeus fashion to grind out rounds and games and win the ones you should and lose the ones you should. But yeah, it feels like VP had probably more well-rounded, I would say, like that they were, and to have 3 players in the top 20 for the year that's crazy. That's what we're talking about with the best teams in the world, right? Whereas I don't know if the Na'Vi guys would have had anybody say other than Guardian and Flamey.
No, I think it'd probably just be Guardian. Here's the thing, I've got a story that corroborates that as well, because the detail we're forgetting is the infamous line. Other teams changed players, we just changed roles. They literally within that team, like as different people were good, or as famously 3 of them took over the IGL role.
Yeah,
like they actually would just swap it up. So there's another quality, by the way, that in bizarre fashion they actually share with the teams at the top of the list. Like Astralis and Fnatic was like that. In Astralis and Fnatic, one guy, Crims could be good 3 months, then Olaf could be there, then Pasha. Like that is the thing that will give you the longevity, obviously, because then you can go through the period. If it was the Na'Vi team, well, as we saw, as soon as Guardian's wrist's gone, the team's going down again. It's just going to be a good team,
That was one of the cool things about that VP team is like it felt like, like you said with Na'Vi, like the strength is in like the muscle of Guardian and his opping. With VP, it felt like, yeah, they had that muscle with Snacks and Bialy, but like the real strength of that team was like the connective players, the guys like Taz and Neo, like Neo being able to say, yeah, Pasha, you don't want to op anymore? I'll take that role for like the next 6 months, or all in the game lead for the next year. Like I can handle this, and being able to swap around to so many different roles. That was such, I don't know if I'd call it an advantage, but it does just like speaks to the mentality of that team and what made them such a strong team. And I always really admired that about this VP squad.
For sure.
Also, when I look at the end of the year for Na'Vi, I don't know how many people remember that IEM San Jose that Na'Vi won. Remember, VP was there with the stand-in. They were missing, I think, Bialy, and also Na'Vi had to go through Team Liquid in the semifinals, and that's the famous clip of Edward having the 1v4 on Catwalk coming through the smoke. That was the first Team Liquid choke. That was the one moment.
We've identified patient zero.
That started the entire trend of Team Liquid chokes for like the next 4 years.
Right.
So, I mean, when you look at that as like a victory and like a trophy for that Na'Vi in 2015, I look at that and I'm like, yeah, but they got a couple gimmies in there, didn't they? They got a couple gifts passed their way.
Jason's using the time machine to go back, and then he goes up to like fucking Nitro, like, watch out that round with the smoke on Catwalk. 12 monkeys style.
Absolutely. Yeah. Don't turn around. Don't turn around.
I mean, look, so I for me, I'm sort of leaning towards Virtus Pro. I think the trophies, the types of trophies that they won, the longevity, as you said as well, a sort of vehement stance that they weren't going to change the lineup.
Yes.
Which might have hurt Polish counterstrike in the long term.
Yeah.
But it certainly worked for these guys. And, people who know this team, Neo and Taz always had a bit of a weird relationship, a bit fractious. They would routinely like swap stuff around and argue over whose ideas were right.
To me, they were more brothers than friends, if you get the analogy.
Yeah, exactly. Totally. But yeah, the mad thing is, like, Chad's blown my mind by saying like Pasha was number 3 in the world.
That is mad, isn't it?
It's easy to forget.
Pasha as hell.
Yeah, it's easy. It's easy to forget.
Dude, that's the trivia question on the Trivial Pursuit when ESL if they ever actually included teams. It would be, who is the number 3 player of 2014? Because you're going to go through every other name on the list. You're going to go, it must have been Guardian or Kenny S, and you're going to be wrong. You're never going to get to Pasha at any point in time. The joke is even Pasha would go Guardian. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
so, I mean, look, I think just the fact that they were so
Virtus Pro did get the cheese.
Yes. Yeah. And look, I mean, I struggle with Virtus Pro because I sort of can't forgive Snacks and Bialy for like essentially throwing in the towel in their careers at the point they did. But that's got nothing to do with what they did at the time they were doing it.
I would just offset that by remembering what a cunt Zeus is.
Yeah, true. You're right. You've won. You know how I work. You press my button.
There we go.
So yeah, I mean, look, this Na'Vi team, man, they were a fucking joy to watch. They used to innovate. They did tactics and stuff. But yeah, I think in a head-to-head matchup at this time period, I think VP just out firepower them. I don't even think they need to outbrain them.
I'll contrast that by saying I absolutely hated watching this Na'Vi team play. I thought it was so boring. I still think some of those issues plagued them for many years after this, obviously. And I think between these two teams, even outside of all like the intangibles, just player to player, I think the only player from this Na'Vi team that I'd want to bring in and I'd put over a VP player is Guardian. Yes. I think the other 4 players, even if it's Taz and Neo for the most part, I'd kind of have them over their counterparts on the other side of things. So I'm taking that VP squad to initiate the plow and make it through to the next round.
And Guardian's lack of a major is one of the all-time tragedies. And I know for Thorin, it's always existence. Like, if you had to choose between Guardian getting a major or existence getting a major.
All I'm going to tell you, Richard, this isn't even a joke. It's ready. The second we finish recording this, I will release a video. It's called Existence at the Majors. And I go through all the majors. That isn't even prepared, everyone. You all think of this like an auction. That's real. That is the world we live in, okay?
Yeah. Am I the only one? I always enjoyed watching Guardian play, and I obviously know he's an incredible player, but I don't know. He's one player I haven't ever really had sympathy for not having a major. Like, there are other guys where I'm like, it's going to be a travesty if he doesn't get a major. I don't have that sense. I don't have that feeling with Guardian personally.
Dude, he never played in a team in his native language or with players from his country, and he was in 3 major finals. I'm
not saying he doesn't deserve to be there. Or for me personally, I don't have that same like romantic, like God, Guardian really needs a major. Like I really want Nico to get a major.
Okay.
Like I really think I want Nico to get a major. I have that feeling about Nico. I don't have it about Guardian for some reason. I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever.
Oh, because Cloud9 stole that fucking major from him, didn't they? Yeah, you did, little bastard. And then also give back those 13 colonies and repatriate your motherfucking bitch ass right now.
So
that can keep Australia though.
Anyways,
so let's put it to the vote. In our time travel LAN, who wins? I'm in for the plow.
I hate that all the. I was going to say I hate that all the favorites are winning so far because I'm going for the plow as well. But it's like the top 4 seeds.
Yeah, but think about what the next fucking round's going to be like.
Yes. Yeah. I'm going to go plow.
Yeah, I'm going plow.
Moses?
Listen, just said he hates Na'Vi, so I feel like he's kind of put his cards on the table.
Right.
He doesn't even feel sorry for Guardian not winning a fucking beer. I hope you meet him again in real life and he watches this. Like, but Jason, I thought friends.
It's gonna sound so bad.
You didn't even care.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
He had to do the whole thing, Jason. He had to play Source for a while. The poor guy. Like, come on. Yeah,
Mate, He even went and played 1.6, I think.
He did it all.
Yeah. So, crazy stuff. All right. Well, there you go. Virtus Pro are going to be through to the next round. Commiserations, Guardian, the time travel LAN major. I'm making it a major now. Is going to be another. Why not? PGL get one.
Exactly.
So,
yeah. Okay.
I think it's only fair.